What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be taking a look at all of the multiplayer maps that I was able to pick out from the reveal for Black Ops 7. It turns out they did show clips on almost all of them, if not every one of these 16 multiplayer maps that we will have access to at launch. So I took the time to organize clips here so we can get a good look at each one of these maps. Obviously, we did see fewer clips on some maps versus others, but diving right in, we do know there's going to be 16 at launch. And those are Raid, which we actually got a handful of clips on Raid, so we got a pretty good look at that. This one is a reskin, so same layout, but it is set in Japan. On top of that, we have a really brief clip on Express, which also appears to be set in Japan. And then finally, we have Hijack for our remade maps at launch. But then on top of those 3 remade maps for 6v6, we have 13 brand new maps. And Modern Warzone actually gave us a list of the map names. And these are The Forge, Toshiba, Exposure, Cortex, Scar, Den, Homestead, Colossus, Imprint, Dyson, Retrieval, Paranoia, and finally Blackheart. Those are the 6v6 maps. And then there's also going to be 2 20v20 maps, and the mode on that is called Skirmish, although maybe they're going to have multiple modes on this in the future. And we did get a bit of a look at least one of these. It is set on Avalon. I believe they're both going to be set on Avalon. And we can see all of that taking place here. Lots of fighting on this rooftop. And with that out of the way, let's dive into the clips that I've organized and categorized here. Keeping in mind, I think I got most of these very accurate, so I've got all the right clips together with the same map, but there may be some instances where I misplaced a clip and I thought it was on one map, but it turns out it's a different map entirely. But the first one that we saw a lot of is this one here, and I believe this is the one that's going to be called The Forge. And the funny thing about this one is we actually got an overhead view clip in the very first reveal we got several months back for Black Ops 7, where it's more of a teaser than anything, but they did provide a few clips at the end, and we actually get this overhead view of the map. And this is very obviously the same map that I've been sharing clips of here. I would categorize this as likely a medium-small map. Like, it's not tiny by any means, but it's obviously not a very large map. And it looks like a very clearly defined 3-lane design. On the one side, we've got the manufacturing area. On the other, we've got what appears to be more of a showcase where they're showing off all of the weapons and gear that they're making there. And then there appears to be a center lane out in the open between those two areas. So that's the first one, and like I said, the one that we saw probably the most clips on throughout all of the reveal. Next, we have this map here, which appears to be set on some sort of an offshore platform. And there's a logo featured throughout this that says Blackheart, so this is likely the map that's called Blackheart. And with this one, once again, as far as we can tell with these clips, it does appear to be 3-lane. We have this first lane on the one side of the map where we see both of these clips featured. Then this appears to be on the opposite side where we have these wall bounces that take place. And then he wall bounces into the center area, which appears to be an interior area where he gets these kills. Now, if you piece all these clips together, we actually get a pretty good look at most of the map, including an indication of the size, especially since we can see this wall bounce take place going both directions, so you can see the length of the map there. And to me, this does appear to be a fairly small map. Again, you could maybe call it small to medium, but leaning more in the direction of a small map. Now, after that, this clip takes place in Tokyo, and it's a player coming from outside going in, taking a look at the surroundings and the lighting and everything, as well as the setting being in Japan. It appears that all of these clips are from the same map, including this overhead view with the VTOL. And therefore, this one looks like it's going to be a mix of fighting through some narrow alleyways, as well as inside a train station, or at least a section of a train station. And personally, I really like the aesthetic of this one, although we don't really get nearly as much of an indication of the general layout of this map, or even the size of it. Next, we got quite a few clips on this map here, a very icy environment. I believe they mentioned this is set in Alaska. Very beautiful looking map in my opinion. There's definitely a lot more openness to this one compared to some of the other maps we've seen so far. It is hard to tell, but it does appear to be maybe a little bigger as well. But I wouldn't say we got enough clips to really be able to piece things together nicely. As for the next map that we got a solid handful of clips on, this one takes place in a shipyard. And it looks like there's going to be a mix of fighting inside and outside, a little bit of verticality as well. This is the one where there is a vertical zip line where you can get from the bottom part up to the top part. This is also the same map where we get this clip here where the player is calling in this controllable drone that they can use. And I'm personally liking the color and aesthetics of this one, but once again, really need to get our hands on it to get a solid indication of the layout. Next, we have this really trippy map right here with a lot of reds, floating objects around the map as well, really leaning into the whole campaign theme of the drug-induced hallucinations. This is not really out of the ordinary for Black Ops maps, even in multiplayer, for stuff like this to sort of bleed over. And if I had to guess, this one is probably the one called Paranoia. Then after that, we just got a couple clips on this map here, which has been confirmed to also be set in Alaska. Unfortunately, not a whole lot to say about this one since we don't get to see very much of it. Then I believe all of these clips are from the same map. I could be mistaken, especially with that first clip. It might be on a different map, but it does have very similar lighting at least. I believe this is all from the same map. Once again, we don't really get a solid look, and that's going to be a common theme throughout the rest of the video here, since we're getting into the maps that we didn't see a whole lot of. But after that, there are a couple clips that we see on this map, and these are definitely both from the same map. So we got an outside area moving into more of an interior area. Then I believe all of these clips are from a different map that we haven't seen so far. It is possible these are just part of one of the maps we've already covered, but I think this is its own unique map. And then finally, we got these two really short clips right here. You can clearly see it is a snowy environment, and this just doesn't line up with any of the other clips I was able to find throughout the reveal. So I do believe this is just a very brief look at another map as well, but obviously we really can't see much here, aside from the fact that there is snow in the outside areas. And there we go. That's at least 11 or 12 out of the 13 non-remade maps that we're expecting for 6v6 in Black Ops 7's multiplayer. Then, of course, like I said, there are the 3 remade maps that we're expecting to come back. And overall, I have said this before, but I'll say it again, I'm really liking the variety that we're seeing with these maps. One of my big complaints with the maps in Black Ops 6 is just the fact that so many of them are just set in Avalon. So they have a very similar color palette, similar architecture with the buildings, similar vegetation and lighting, and it just doesn't feel like the really varied global setting that we're used to seeing in most Call of Duty games, where each map, at least visually, really stands out from the other maps in the game. That doesn't look like that's going to be a problem at all in Black Ops 7, and that's something I'm actually looking forward to quite a bit. Additionally, since we're talking about maps here, I do want to reiterate something that I did point out in a previous video when we were talking about the reveal, but I do think it's very important to touch on once again. And this was a little statement they made about their map design philosophy in Black Ops 7. They said, from the start of development, player feedback has been infused into every angle of the game, and building maps that reflect this in meaningful ways has been a key part of the process. Pushing the boundaries of design and combat flow, the Black Ops 7 multiplayer maps are designed to breathe more, with enough space for players to fully explore the expanded Omni movement system while still delivering the tight, cover-to-cover combat that defines Black Ops. Each map layout emphasizes clear lane definition, controlled sight lines, and tactical opportunities for creative flanking and positioning. And as I said before, on paper, I'm really liking the sounds of this. It does appear to be addressing some of the complaints that we've seen with the map design in Black Ops 6. The first one being that the maps just felt way too cramped in Black Ops 6, especially with Omni movement present. It just didn't feel like the maps were designed with Omni movement in mind. Like, we have this new movement system and we want to utilize it, but in many cases, there's just no space to properly utilize that. That was a big complaint. And then another big complaint that I personally had was a lack of that clear lane definition. Technically, you could call them 3-lane maps. Like, you could draw 3 primary lanes from one spawn to the other, but the problem was there was a lack of definition between those, and the lines would really get blurred, and you could often see all the way from the left-hand lane, for instance, you'd have a nice clear line of sight on anybody on the opposite side of the map, like 2 lanes over, and that's not typically what you'd expect with a more traditional 3-lane design, where once you're in a lane, you're kind of locked in that lane, and most of your fights will take place within that lane. However, there might be a few points where you can cut between lanes toward the center of the map. And so far, based on these clips, especially with the maps where we saw a lot of clips where we can actually sort of piece together and get a good indication of the maps, it does appear that the statement they made here is holding true, at least with some of the maps for Black Ops 7. And therefore, just focusing on the maps so far, I'm liking what I'm seeing, and this is looking promising, at least in this one specific area. Now, is it possible we're just seeing lots of clips on their best maps? Yes, of course. Maybe some of the maps that we didn't see much on, they're not actually very well designed. Time will have to tell on that, but so far, I think things are looking pretty good in this one specific area. Now, of course, these are just my thoughts, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about the maps based on the clips that you've seen here, as well as the statements that they've made. Are you guys feeling fairly optimistic about the map design in this game, or not so much? Just let me know all of those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.